How's everybody doing? Good? It's wonderful to be with all of you this morning. When I first heard the topic for this talk, I loved it right away because I thought about the autumn and the falling leaves and how beautiful it is. I grew up in New York City, and every fall we'd make the trek to Central Park or Prospect Park to look at the leaves falling and to look at the different colors and witness nature's bounty and beauty and its brilliance. And if you've never seen it, it's worth making a trek somewhere where you can see that. It's amazing. And then I also thought about literally the beauty of the fall. And I said, yes, falling can be beautiful. Failing can be beautiful. Now, I haven't always felt that way. In fact, growing up, I grew up in London with a single mother. We're from Ghana, West Africa. And my beautiful mother, Gladys, a nice Ghanaian name for you, was single, and she was young. She was 26. And at that time in England, in London, the environment we were in wasn't always the most friendly, to say the least. So we found ourselves a lot of times in very hostile situations and circumstances. So my mother had to find a way to navigate through that kind of thing, that situation. And what I witnessed was that Mom always wanted everything to just kind of be calm. Don't ruffle any feathers. Don't upset anyone. If something happens and you disagree, just calmly nod your head and, just go along to get along. So as a child watching her do this, I interpret that as being, well, I needed people's approval at any cost, that no matter what, I had to get along with people. Don't ruffle feathers. Keep that stiff upper lip, which is not a lot of fun. And it worked up to a point until it didn't work anymore. In my 20s in New York, I was diagnosed with fibroid tumors. Never heard of them before, didn't know what they were. And when I looked at the doctor's face as he gave me this diagnosis, he looked very grave and he was like, oh my goodness, we have to get you to surgery right away. But there was something in me that knew that even though right now, at that moment, I had failed health, there was something in me that said, wait a minute. So I said to the doctor, well, could you give me like a month to just be with all of this? He said, it's all happening very fast. I don't even know what you're talking about. And I'd like to take some time to kind of just understand what's happening to me. There was something in me that knew that I had the power. I was grateful for the doctor, but he didn't have power over me or my body. So I asked for at least a month, and he gave it to me. He said, okay, you got a month. And in that month, I joined a walking club, Gary Null's walking club in New York. I would get up at like 3 a.m., 2 a.m. sometimes to travel all the way from Brooklyn to New York, to Manhattan. And sometimes it was snowing, it was hard rain, it was cold. And there I hate being cold. But I was doing it. And I loved who I was becoming. My body was getting in shape, and I felt real and vital and alive. It was incredible. I started to eat better. I started to be more mindful of the company I was keeping. So a month later, when I went back to see the doctor, he was astounded. He was like, whoa, what did you do? And I said, well, you frightened me, and it frightened me into better health. And he said, well, you've done a great job because the tumors, they're negligible. We don't need to give you the surgery. Whew, I was like, great, okay. So then I moved to Los Angeles, and I started to work with incarcerated children. I wanted something to do to give back. When I moved to LA, I started working right away as an actor, getting commercials, TV films, and I thought, wow, there's gotta be more to my life than this. And I had an opportunity to go and mentor incarcerated children. I didn't even know that children could be incarcerated. Now I've found out that LA County incarcerates more children than any place else in the world. Is it because more children are bad in LA, in this country? I don't think so, than any place else. But what we do is that these children that have failed, we put a whole mass of them into detention facilities. You know, we just write them off. There they are. They failed. They're criminals. Well, what I've found out, though, is that these same failed children have a capacity to love and to forgive unlike anything I've ever seen. You know, children that have been abused, neglected, tormented, some of them, and a lot of times the perpetrators are members of their own families, and yet they harbor no bitterness. They don't have a sense of revenge. They love their families. I have a young mentee, a young woman, she's 16. One day as I was leaving the camp, she calls me, Miss Akuyoe, here's my mom's number. Do you think you could give her a call, please, and just find out where she is and how she is? And I said, sure. She said, you know, when I was taken away, when I was arrested, that was the last time I saw her, and I'm worried about her. She's been on the streets, she drinks, she takes drugs, and I'm really worried about my mom. And I said, of course I'll give her a call. And I said, but you know, this is your time for you, because you're dealing with your own issues of addiction and wanting to be sober. She said, I know, but please, I need to know how my mom is. So that evening I called her mother, and I was able to reach her, and I said, you know, your daughter is really concerned about you. Please, just every once in a while, call the facility. Even if you don't reach her, just call and say, I called, give her a message, you love her, and she can continue with her own growth and development. And the mother said, I know, she's so compassionate. I said, yes, she is. Because instead of being concerned about herself, she's concerned about you. So that's the least you can do. And I said, you know, she also wants me to try to help you get into a facility yourself where you can be helped. Are you willing to do that? And the mother said, yes. And she told me to call back the next day to arrange where I could go pick her up. Of course, I called back and she disappeared. But I went back and I told her daughter, and I said, I did speak with her, but I haven't been able to reach her again since. And the daughter looked at me and said, thank you. I'm glad to know she's alive. I was worried that maybe she was no longer alive. But I guess now I need to let her go and focus on myself. I said, yes, you do. It's time for you to be with you. This is your time. And that's not the exception. That young girl is not the exception. Most of the children that I mentor and teach in these facilities are like that. They are dreaming about opening up centers of compassion where children and families can go. Children and families that have been abused. Children that grow up watching a parent, usually the mother, being beaten up or killed. They want a safe place. This is what they're dreaming of. And yet we're not listening because we've labeled them failures. They've made a mistake. And we don't seem to have the capacity to hold the space for redemption for our children. And if we did, if we dared to listen, what we would learn. Because of them, I've learned to be okay with myself, with my body, to let my tummy out. It's okay. I have a big tummy. You know? They love the phrase, keeping it real. And they do. You can't be with them unless you're real. Because of them, I've learned that failure isn't the final word. It's just a word. It's just a word. That's all it is. And they've helped me to realign and redefine my relationship with that word. It no longer hangs over me, confining me. They have so much to offer. You know, recently I heard that one of the founders of Patagonia, the store, said, if you want innovation, speak to kids in juvenile hall. And he's right. I mean, we all hear about thinking outside the box. Well, they're thinking outside the box, but we're not listening. So really, it made me think, you know, society talks a good game, but do we ever mean any of the things we say? Think outside the box, be innovative. Do we really? Because when you do, you get hell for it. You know, it's like, no, well, that's not the way it's done. Yeah, I'm trying to do it differently. You know, so I'm changing my relationship to failure. I want to let you know that the fibroids came back, which the doctor told me that it might. They're stubborn little creatures. So this time I said, okay, Let me go deeper. Let me see what this is really about. And I realized in my research that a lot of women, particularly African American women, get fibroids. And I thought, yeah, that makes sense. I can understand that. We hold so much in. You know, I don't know where the myth of the angry black woman came from, because honestly, most of us hold in so much. We don't really say what we feel. We don't really say what we mean. We don't really do the things we want to do in our hearts. We're just holding it all in. That's why over 90% of black women get fibroids, these tumors. They're like parasites eating away at you. So with that realization, and with everything that I'm learning with my children, I said, okay, all right, let me have the courage to be me. So I went to my acting class, and my acting teacher said to me, what would you like to work on? And I got up on stage and I said, you know what? I want to work on failing today. I just want to make a complete ass out of myself. I just want to get up on that stage. I don't care if my scene works or doesn't work. I just want to try, I want to fail, and I want to have a good time doing so. And he said, okay. And I was working on a monologue. I took Psalm 121, which is one of my favorite Psalms, and I turned that into a monologue. And I had the best time of my life. I realized that by giving myself permission to fail, I had actually given myself permission to succeed. I'd given myself space to be in the moment, to be present, to listen, to try different things. Because normally I would be so, prescribed and everything scripted, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to turn that way. And no, I was like, no, to heck with it. Just get up on that stage, and whatever happens, let it happen. And it was beautiful. I really think that was probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And it made me realize again, when I give myself permission to fail, I'm actually giving myself permission to grow. And what I've come to see is that failure, that which I know as failure, is actually part of the fabric of life. It's not separate and apart. And if I'm afraid to fail, what I'm actually saying is I'm afraid to succeed. Just as if I'm afraid to die, I'm actually afraid to live. The paradox, the contradictions, it's all part of this fabric that is life, the many colors of it. And failure is just one color. And keeping in line with that, now when I go to auditions, doesn't mean I get everything I audition for, but I've noticed there's a fearlessness with me now. Recently this summer, I went up for a Southwest commercial. And the description, when you get a commercial call or any audition, they tell you the character. And with commercials, they tell you the attire. So it said business attire. And I remember I looked at it and I thought, I don't feel like wearing business attire to this. I just don't want to do it. So, I have a white skirt, very flowy, very goddessy. And I wore my goddessy skirt and another flowy top. Very unbusinesslike. And I went to the audition, and I did the audition, and I had a great time. I loved it. I felt wonderful, and because I thought, business, I had already an idea of what I thought business would be, but I said my business could be anything. Maybe I make flowy skirts, that's my business. And I'm wearing the attire that matches the business that I have. Well, I got a call back for the audition, but I wasn't able to go because I was working on a film. And I was like, oh, well, they saw me. If they want me, they'll call me. They'll give it to me. And they did, and they gave it to me. But, the thing is, I'm having more fun in my life. I'm having more fun because I'm allowing myself to be me. Before, with everything so prescribed, with the projections about success that I had placed on myself, there was really no room to breathe. Breathing, very important to have a healthy body, especially if you're dealing with fibroids. Now I could breathe. I could stop holding my stomach in, everywhere. Even when I'm working with my staff, now I can be myself and I can say, hey, I may be boss, but it doesn't mean I know everything. I'm going to bring everything I know to the table and everything I don't know to the table. And that's all right with me. I don't mind being vulnerable. And if I make a mistake, I don't mind saying I'm sorry. I don't mind owning up and being the first to say, I take responsibility for that. It is so freaking freeing, you know, especially from where I came from, where I had so much investment in being approved by everyone else, everyone. Where I had such an investment in being right, where I had such an investment in the image that I wanted people to see of me, that I held up. But that image was going to crush me if I didn't let it go, if I wasn't willing to be vulnerable, if I wasn't willing to be free and to be myself. And I have the children to thank for that as well. These beautiful, angry, hardened children that have failed so drastically, so dramatically, and yet that dare to harbor love and forgiveness and love and forgiveness again and again and again. And if we would but just listen, if we would but just be more accepting, and maybe it begins with us accepting our own fabric and colors of failures and the reinterpretation of that word, to know that it is just a word. It doesn't have any power. It doesn't mean anything except the meaning that we place onto it. And maybe if we did that, we would be more embracing of one another, more embracing of the beautiful colors of life, just like the fall season in the parks in New York City on the East Coast. Thank you so much.